Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Strategies for Improving Reading Comprehension. My name is Nicole. I'm the Education and Training Coordinator for the Florida Literacy Coalition, Florida's Adult and Family Literacy Resource Center. This webinar was made possible through the support of the Florida Department of Education, Division of Career and Adult Education. So before I begin, I'd like to turn your attention to your control panel. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. At the top, you'll see a red arrow, so you can click that button to dock and undock your control panel. On your main control panel, you'll see a box labeled questions. If you have any questions for the presenter or any technical questions, you can put them in there. The presenter may also ask you some open-ended questions throughout the webinar. You can type your answers to those questions in that box as well. Throughout the webinar, you'll also be asked to participate in polls. When this happens, a screen will pop up and you'll just have to choose the answer that best fits. Okay, so with that out of the way, I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Iris Strunk. Iris has been an educator for more than 25 years. She has been both a classroom teacher and a reading specialist in grades K through 8 and is currently a professor of reading at Northwest Florida State College. Iris facilitates reading and study skills trainings and is a strong advocate for using research-based strategies to teach reading comprehension. She has played a role in education as a writer and speaker for events and conferences that focus on reading comprehension and study skills. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass it off to Iris.
Hello, welcome everyone. Okay. It's not working. There we go. We are going to look at strategies for improving reading comprehension today, and certainly there are some goals that we need to be aware of. By the end of this session, you will be able to facilitate struggling readers understanding that readers must have a purpose when reading the text for comprehension to occur. You must help struggling readers to deconstruct text to promote a deeper understanding of the relationship between the text and the meaning of the words on the page. Additionally, you will be able to assist struggling readers to annotate and summarize passages as they deconstruct text. Let's take a poll. If you'll go ahead and answer this particular question, in what capacity do you serve underprepared readers? A, teacher, B, administrator, C, volunteer, or D, other.
Okay, I've launched the poll, Iris, so we'll give them about 30 more seconds to let everyone chime in. Okay, it looks like most of everyone has voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'll share the responses with you, Iris, okay?
Okay.
All right, so it looks like 53% are teachers, 20% are administrators, 17% volunteer, and 10% other.
Interesting. A lot of teachers, which is very good. That's what we need to have. Okay, so why aren't we moving? Okay, I'm not moving. Let's try this. There we go. All right. Let's see if it'll go. Nope. There we go. All right, we're in. Here we are. Come on. There we go. So again, as you know, the summary is that important short account of the main points of text. Summaries are not a place for opinions, background information, personal information. The summary process begins with a retelling. First, the students read the text, then they ask, what was this text about? The answer, of course, should be a complete sentence or two and should cover the main point and the key ideas. It also should be in the reader's own words and should not be a word or two. My students ask me, should I retell everything? As we know, no, you should not. You should only talk about the major ideas and the necessary information. That's the only thing that should go into the summary. As instructors, you must guide your struggling readers to ask, do I need this information to understand the text? If the answer is yes, then you help your readers to put the information into their own words in that summary. We're going to try this process and look at this particular passage as we summarize it. I was guilty of giving a passage to my students and then just telling them, read it quietly, and then write the summary. Now I know that is something I can't believe that I actually tortured my students with. You have to have a process, you have to have a strategy in order to have understanding and comprehension occur. So you have in this passage, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4, Privet Drive, were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. Now we're going to start the deconstructing the text. First of all, you will recall as much as you can of the text, and there it is. And you are looking at, as you recall from elementary school, the who, what, where, when, why, how. Who are we talking about here in this passage? We're talking about Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, and then there's all this information that follows it. Some of my students, it's too much for them. So I start very, very basically, and I ask them, how many sentences are in the text? This is a short text, so if you'll count the sentences, and if you'll write that number in your question box. And of course, you all wrote 2 because there's only 2 sentences. As we deconstructed the text in our analysis, we are looking at, again, the 2 people that are mentioned first, the who. Then there's this information that follows that is not really important. But what is important is that the people are normal. There's even a little addition there that's added by the author to make sure that you understand that is an important statement. Then the they is a repeat for the names of the people, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley. Pronouns are absolutely important for students to understand. They can interfere with the comprehension of text because oftentimes students either ignore them or they're not quite sure what to do with them. So it's very vital that whatever the pronoun is, that they understand what it's referring to, who it's referring to, and how it works in that particular text. So they are Mr. and Mrs. Dursley. They were the last people to be involved in anything strange or mysterious. The rest of the information, where they live, all that, it's not important. So as you are doing your analysis piece, come on, there we go. We're going to now summarize the text. And there is the summary that you probably came up with. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley were normal people who would not be involved in anything strange or mysterious. That text now is understood by your students. It's a very simple one. It makes sense if you deconstruct how it is done. Once again, you're having your students look for the main idea and key points. Main idea is what that text is about. The key points are those arguments, the information that's used to support the main idea. Key points may be developed or elaborated with major supporting details, and then the retelling or the summary should only include main ideas and key points, not minor supporting details. And once again, this is a lot of information that we as instructors expect our students to understand, but you have to push them to look at the text carefully and then deconstruct it by going sentence by sentence in their analysis as they put that information together. If you'll go ahead and in this poll answer the question, do you agree that most underprepared readers lack effective strategies to summarize most passages?
All right, I launched the poll, so we'll give everyone about 45 seconds to answer.
Oh, absolutely. It looks like we're all on the same page. That is the problem, that they were unable to do that, to have a strategy that they can use. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Okay, it looks like everyone answered, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share it.
Okay.
Yep, 100% people said yes.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody agrees that that is true. There we go. Let's analyze then this passage. Normally, I would give my students this particular passage, and I allow them to work with a partner so that way they can exchange ideas. And I have them circle the words that I want them to focus on. So as you are mentally reading through this passage, I want you to look for, in each sentence, the focus. So you would start with sentence 1. What would be the focus? Then you could go to sentence 2, read it. What would be the focus? And so on. So a penny for your thoughts. If it's a 1943 copper penny, it could be worth as much as $50,000. In 1943, most pennies were made out of steel since copper was needed for World War II. So the 1943 copper penny is ultra rare. Another rarity is the 1955 double die penny. These pennies were mistakenly double stamped, so they have overlapping dates and letters. If it's uncirculated, it'll easily fetch $25,000 at an auction. Now that's a penny worth having. So what is the focus of that paragraph? Go ahead and write your answer in the question box. We educators know too much. You all are excellent because obviously you have comprehension and understanding. You'll not get that, as you know, from the students because they have to be kind of pointed in the right direction. And that's why I have my students work in pairs. That way, one of them can read part of the passage out loud, or they can take turns reading it out loud, because that reading out loud sometimes helps them to be able to focus on what is important. So there is your focus of the paragraph. And some of you gave me more information than I needed, but you all zeroed in that the whole passage was about that penny. And again, as you're moving through with your students, you start with looking at each sentence individually. So there you have in sentence 1, the penny is talked about. Sentence 2 is talked about. And you'll notice again, pronouns. I count those pronouns. I direct my students to make sure that they look at those pronouns and they understand that that word it is referring to that penny. So as you look at the passage in its entirety, with looking at how the pennies are indicated in red and the pronoun for pennies indicated in red, that has to be the focus. If it's repeated that many times and that every sentence is having that word penny in it, it must be an important word and it should be used in that summary. So when you help your students retell and summarize, you first determine the topic of the sentence. Which word is repeated throughout the passage? There it is, as you noticed and you indicated, your focus of that paragraph is pennies. It's indicated in each one of those paragraphs. And those pronouns, again, are vital. The students must realize how important the pronouns are to the comprehension piece. Now, once you've done that, you're going to determine what the author wants you to know about the topic. And some of you indicated in your question box that already. So there you are. You have the pennies that are the topic. Now, what does the author want you to know about that topic? First of all, there are two kinds. There was a 1943 copper, and there was a 1955 double die. That's important. Additionally, once you go further and you are looking at the topic, you want to know that they are rare. And again, here it indicates in the passage, rare, rare. So those are the elements that have to be in the summary as those students complete their summaries. So looking at it this way, you have indicated again the important words that should be in their summary. As they retell and they summarize the text, here are some possible responses. This is an incorrect one. The text is about pennies. Yes, a student of mine actually put that down. That's too broad. That doesn't give you enough information. It's too short, too limited. Here's another one. The 1943 copper penny is worth a lot of money. Copper was hard to get during the war, so there weren't many of them. The 1955 double die penny is worth a lot too. These pennies were stamped twice on accident. Wow, way too much information. Minor details are in there. We don't need those minor details as they are constructing their summary. Here is the correct response. The text is about two very rare and valuable pennies. The pennies are the 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die penny. This includes the key information, doesn't have any unnecessary information, is complete. Actually, there's two sentences, but it could be shortened to one sentence. For some of the students that have a better grasp of writing sentences, they're able to combine and make it, this text is about two very rare and valuable pennies, which are the 43 copper penny and the 1955 double die penny. The key with working with the students is to start with something very simple that they can understand and not be threatened by, so that they can concentrate on understanding the actual strategy. So what I do is I use nursery rhymes. Most of the students, it surprises me, haven't really learned about nursery rhymes, haven't had family read them to me, but they're simple. They're to the point, very quick and simple. So they read each nursery rhyme, they summarize the nursery rhyme in as few words as possible, They include the key information that comes from the actual nursery rhyme, and then they compare their answers. So here's the first one. The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout, down came the rain and washed the spider out. Up came the sun and dried up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again. So what would you say is the focus of this nursery rhyme? Go ahead and write that answer in that question box. And again, it looks like because you are educators and you know too much, you are all correct because you're zeroing in on that spider. And again, some of you gave me more information than just the spider, but that is fine. That at least you have, with what you know about it, you have gotten even more information. There we go. And there's the spider, and he climbed in, down came the rain, washed the spider out. And then there is something else that the author wants you to know about the spider. And again, in order to write that summary, you've got to look at this information. You know he's already going up the water spout, but then there's something else that happens, and that again comes at the end, and he got up again. So there is your summary for this particular nursery rhyme. Now, here's a second one. We're not going to walk you through. I'm just going to quickly show it to you. Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to give her poor dog a bone. But when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog had none. What would be a summary for this? Now, that's going to be a sentence this time. You don't have to put it anywhere. You don't have to write it in. You can just think of it mentally. What you want to do is make sure you figure out the focus, and what about that focuses your author wants you to know. So I'm sure you came up with, a woman had no food to feed her dog. Your students will say Old Mother Hubbard. That's fine too. That's the woman. It's just like she, if it were she. And obviously, the rest of it, it fits with this particular nursery rhyme. Let's try another one. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating some curds and whey. Whoa, there's some vocabulary in there that's going to trouble your students. They're probably going to want to know what a tuffet is, and then you can talk about the clue about sitting. So what do you sit on, and have that discussion. And then eating curds and whey. You can again ask, if you look at the picture, it looks like it's in a bowl with a spoon, then guide them toward the direction of perhaps she's eating some kind of grits or oats that she has mixed up. And then along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. So now again, with a summary, a complete sentence starting with that capital letter and ending in a period, what would be the summary for this particular nursery rhyme? A spider scared the girl away. And again, it could be the spider scared the Miss Muffet away. That would be fine too. As long as they're in that ballpark, they're going to have understanding, comprehension. Now we're going to look at this Humpty Dumpty rhyme, which I am sure many of you remember from childhood. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, knowing that rhyme, your students may have some difficulty understanding this particular rhyme, because they have to have some prior knowledge. I'm sure you're aware of all the research out there that indicates prior knowledge is a huge, huge factor in comprehension. And especially when they're taking their tests, it plays a big role. So, prior knowledge. In the question box again, indicate what would they have to know in order to understand this particular nursery rhyme. There it is. Yep, I'm seeing it. You are absolutely correct. That's exactly correct. You would have to know that Humpty Dumpty was an egg. If you did not know that, then again, the rest of it would not make much sense to you. There we go. There's Humpty Dumpty is that egg. So for a summary, if you all would again have a sentence and agree, an egg fell and it was irreparably broken. And that's probably what that whole rhyme is about. Once again, if they put Humpty Dumpty in there, that's fine. They're doing, they're understanding that Humpty Dumpty is that egg. That all works. Now, the next one is Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Up Jack got and home did trot as fast as he could caper. Ooh, problems again with some vocabulary there. And went to bed to mend his head with vinegar and brown paper. So you probably would have to have some discussion with this part of the nursery rhyme and indicate, again, the clues. Fast. What do you do fast? Probably run. So that would be the clue there. Again, this one is a little more difficult because it actually has two parts to it. So on this one, because it is a little bit more difficult, what I do is I have my students indicate the people in it. And you'll notice I have Jack circled in red. And please, again, look here at the pronoun. I have circled that because, again, you might have to have that discussion about who is that? Who is it referring to? And then remind them that that is Jack. Pronouns are just as important as the ones that they replace. And then you've got Jill in the blue. Why is it important to know these people and then look at them and divide them up like that? The reason is you're going to ask them for the summary, who is the passage, the nursery rhyme, mostly about? Is it Jack or is it Jill? If they have circled the people like I have shown you to do, it's obvious. The red wins. There's more of the red than the blue. So therefore, the focus is going to be on Jack. So when they write their summary, what is the summary? A boy fell, hurt his head, and bandaged it. If you did not go to through the process of actually looking at it with the two people in it, then you might have gotten the wrong answer, gone off the wrong way. Some of my students say to me, well, what happened to Jill? Okay, Jill, recall not too much in that nursery rhyme. It was mostly the boy, Jack. So once again, it is a very slow process to deconstruct text. It is a careful process, and you have to follow certain instructions in order to be able to write that summary. Here we have the 5-finger summary strategy, another strategy that your students could use. And again, as you look at it, I have my students trace their hand on actual paper, and then they write the words in the fingers. And you might recall that this is very similar to what we learned in elementary school, that who, what, where, when, why, how, that. You're absolutely correct. So this is called the 5-finger summary strategy. So it's an easy method to help your students summarize narrative text. It can be used for a page, a chapter, an entire book. So again, to be non-threatening, because once again, I want them to be focused on the strategy, not how many sentences and words and, oh my gosh, I can't do it. It's a page full of words. I can't do it. You want to take that away. So it's non-threatening. And here we have practice with the 3 little pigs. So you have, for that first one, that's somebody. This is the person who is considered to be the main character. It is that character that drives the action of the story. It can be a group. In the little pigs of the story, the somebody is the 3 little pigs. Wanted is the next word. So what is the main character trying to do? That's what is wanted. What is the goal of the character? That is the wanted piece. And this usually leads to that problem. In the story, the pigs wanted to have their own homes. Then you have that word, but. I make sure that we go over transitions, and we spend a lot of time reviewing the transitions and where they fall in the different categories. Is it time? What is it? Just a connection where you are doing the and. The but, that is one that's a little bit more complicated, because the but is going to focus on the main problem of the text. It's usually in the middle, and it's that challenge that's facing the main character. In that story, again, the wolf keeps blowing down the pigs' houses. So this is a consequence. Wow, now we're really getting into the higher level thinking. The main consequence of the text. It's found usually again in the middle. It sometimes comes before the but. And again in the story, the pigs run to each other's houses to escape the wolf. In the end, this is the solution, the resolution of that text or story. Again, it's at the end, usually. And for the story, the pigs were safe in the house of bricks. Now that you've done your analysis using those particular words to guide the students, you're going to put it all together. So this is an example of a possible summary. 3 little pigs wanted to build their own houses, but a wolf kept blowing them down one at a time. So each piggy escaped to his brother's house for safety. In the end, all 3 pigs were safe in the last pig's brick house. You will notice this summary is longer. It has more elements to it because it's a story. So the story had more elements to choose from. As you walk your students through it, you have to make sure that you are, again, doing it in a very systematic way so that they can understand and see that pattern, which we'll get to shortly what I'm talking about. The more patterns that your students are able to grasp and hold in their brain, the better they will become at comprehending the text. They will recognize that writing does have patterns that it follows, and that removes another threat as they try to understand the text that they are looking at. Come on. There we go. Annotation is an important tool for your students to use as they are deconstructing the text that they are given. This is just the definition. It's a note by way of explanation or comment added to a text or a diagram, perhaps. And it's the action of actually annotating text as they move through a particular text. Annotating strategy requires your students to underline keywords, write margin notes, and summarize main ideas as they read a primary or secondary source. As you know, the research has shown that annotating text greatly improves comprehension. According to the neuroscientist, it has to do with the connection of that hand, what the hand is doing as the student annotates, and the brain. It's a very powerful connection. So annotation is a powerful tool in summarizing text and adding to the comprehension. This is just one sample. Now, annotation, here comes the problem with it. It really is personal. Once a student decides that he or she's going to annotate text, he or she is going to already have made a decision which type of symbols are going to represent whatever is in the text. So this is a suggestion, but that doesn't mean that you have to tell every student to, this is what you're going to do. This is how I annotate my reading text. I love Post-it notes, highlighters, I like the colors. This is what I do when I annotate. Some of my students, they say it's too much. They don't like all that. It's distracting for them. That's why it's personal. Now, there is a particular a method for annotation that is called scuba. And I do show this to my students, but I don't require all of them to do this. Some of them use parts of it. Some of them do not use any of it. The important thing is to get them in the habit of actually using pencil to the passage, to the text. And again, how they do it, what the symbols are, as long as they're consistent and it's meaningful for them, it's fine. If you look at the S, it's scanning the document for headings, images, footnotes, or interesting features. That one's an easy one to teach. You can just open any text, and especially nonfiction, and find this. Circling words you know, find and writing the definitions or you don't know, finding and writing the definitions in the margins. This is easy for your students. It's non-threatening. Just circle the words you don't know, and then we'll work on finding those definitions and writing that in the margin. Underlining key ideas is more difficult. That one, you have to help them work through that deconstructing piece where they go sentence by sentence. It's slow, it's ponderous. Your students probably won't like it initially until they see and understand how it does help them comprehend. But underlining key ideas, that one's going to be more difficult to teach, and it'll take more time. Boxing names, dates, places, and amounts, that's easy again. They can go ahead and do that very quickly. Finding a name, oh, okay, put a box around it. Then this last one is really high on Bloom's taxonomy. Annotating authors' claims, a different theme, summaries of paragraphs or sections. You see, you're now getting into the difficult piece of reading. Patterns, trends, bias, reactions, all of that is going to take time, and you're not going to try to do that initially. You will have worked through your nursery rhymes, and you would have worked through any other easy text just to get them to deconstruct the text. Then finally, if your students get confused, and they will, tell them to reread the last few sentences. I like better B. Reread the last few sentences out loud. Once again, I know that you probably have read the research behind your voice, using your voice as you read out loud, and how important it is in comprehension. It's a focusing mechanism. When your brain hears your voice, then it is more likely to focus on what that text is saying, all those words, and it's focused. It's not worrying about, oh, what am I going to have for lunch? Because the voice is taking control of the focusing. So I do like that, rereading the last few sentences out loud. And when I help my students, if it's a difficult text that they're trying to deconstruct, I will read the text out loud, sentence by sentence, and ask them the questions to focus them on that particular connection that they need among all those sentences to come up with that summary. So that rereading the last few sentences out loud, try explaining it to yourself out loud. That is also very important. And I'm sure you all agree with D. Try to explain it to someone else out loud. If they can do that, you know they have comprehension. So once again, if you are going to show them how to do the annotation because they do not have their own way yet, take it slowly. Just guide them carefully until they personally can pick what works for them. Here is another text that we're going to analyze. And again, you'll notice that it is much harder than the Three Little Pigs and the nursery rhymes. So now there has to be some more deconstructing the text and making those very important connections. So if you look at the first sentence, stereotyping consists of assigning traits to people solely on the basis of a category. Move to sentence 2. Some researchers suggest that stereotyping has 4 clear phases. What is the same in sentence 2 as it was mentioned in 1? The word is, again, stereotyping. It comes directly, flows right from 1 to 2. Now, what's different? If you focus on sentence 2, you've got researchers that are brought in there, and now you've got mentioned the 4 phases. That is important. Your students are looking for, as they go through sentence by sentence, words that are repeated, words that have a special need to be there. For example, in this case, it's the number 4. 4 clear phases. That's important. It was a major change from sentence number 1. Sentence 3, it starts with first. A person distinguishes some category of people. For example, economists. What does that first indicate? What is it connected to in the earlier sentences? It should, if the author had been trying to be blatant about that third sentence, he would have said in the first phase, and the rest of it, a person distinguishes the category. So the word that it's connected to, the numbers are connected to the word phases. That's very important. Then you have the words, for example, those words are going to indicate a minor detail. And as you know, minor details do not belong in a summary. So you can disregard, for example, economists. So you have in sentence 3, that word first is important because it connects to the word phase in sentence 2. You have category that is repeated from sentence 1. And then you're disregarding, for example, economists, because that's a minor detail, not necessary for comprehension. Now moving down to the next sentence, sentence 4, you have the number second. Again, you would ask your students, what is that connected to? It's connected to sentence 2 phases. You're counting down 4 phases. So now you have one phase, and then you have phase number 2. And again, what's phase number 2? You have repeated the word category and the word traits that are from sentence 1. Then you have, for example, dullness. And again, you've told your students, if you've got that for example, it's going to be a minor detail, disregard it. It's not necessary for your summary. Then moving to sentence 5, it's going to be number 3, third, phase 3. You have again category repeated. Now you have, for example, that indicates we don't need that information, so disregard it. And then sentence 6, you've got finally, which is not really a number, but it would be 4 if the author wanted to be give you more information and say phase 4. So that refers back to sentence 2. As you are looking at all of this to write a summary, I want you to look at how there is a pattern here. You have the sentences 1 and 2 that start the sentence, and then sentences 3, 4, 5, and 6 are attached to the number 4. So in your head, you're thinking about what's the focus, what is the focus, and what is it about the focus that your author wants you to know. And the big clue is the numbers. You have to be very, very focused on those numbers to get the summary correct. So there we are. We went through all this as we analyzed and deconstructed this text. And there are your numbers that come up in green, which are very important to this passage and to the understanding of this passage. Remember, you don't want any minor details or superfluous information in your summary. Now, as you look at this, did you come up with this particular summary? Some researchers suggest that stereotyping has 4 phases. Now my students go, "Oh, Mrs. Struntz, that is not right." And I said, "Well, why is that not right?" Because you'll notice sentence 2 actually is the summary for the entire paragraph. It's this. They say, some of my students will say, "Well, no, it's sentence 1, because you told us if words are repeated, then that's going to be a clue to the summary. And look at the word category. It does reappear in quite a few sentences. But I again cautioned you about the numbers. The numbers, there's a reason why the author put the numbers in that last part of the paragraph. They're there for a reason. And because they're there, you have to try to figure out, why would he have it there? So if you look at sentence 2, he's got the 4. There's your reason. He's going to be talking about 4 clear phases. That first sentence is actually an introductory statement. It's too broad to be the summary or the main idea. That sentence 2 is what has everything else following it. All those other sentences define and go into sentence 2. And that's why it wins. That's why it would be the summary as opposed to that sentence 1. This particular pattern, remember I told you that you want your students to put as many of these patterns into their brain so that that way, when they run across an article they're reading or any text, it might be one of these patterns. And this particular pattern, with the first sentence being the introductory statement, and then the second sentence actually leading you to that summary, to the main idea, that's a predominant pattern. That is a pattern they're going to see quite a bit as they read nonfiction. Now, the 4 clear phases, the reason, again, that sentence is the one that is your summary and not sentence 1 is because of those numbers. Once again, the author could have said the first phase is, then moving to the next sentence, the second phase is. And then possibly you might have recognized that, oh my gosh, yeah, that is, all that information relates to phases. But because this author didn't do that, and perhaps maybe you weren't recognizing that the numbers were that important, then you would be led to thinking that number 1 is actually the summary, the main idea. I think you have to, I know it's not I think, I know you have to do this very slowly and methodically with your students, sentence by sentence, because it often turns on just a couple of words what that actual summary is. And as you get into the more difficult text with a lot of long sentences, a lot of words that are there, that is when that confusion starts setting in. And once your students start getting confused like that and they can't figure their way out, they're pretty much done. They're not going to read. They're going to tell you they don't get it. They don't get it. So your job as that instructor is to make sure as you do this analysis and deconstruction, you do it very, very slowly and carefully so that every student understands these clues that make the puzzle all fit together. Come on. So here is our main idea, or our summary for that particular article. Let's move on to another one. This one's really going to be hard, and if I gave this, to which I have, to students and say, okay, this is what we're going to read. If you'll read quietly and then come up with a summary, they all would be out the door. This one you have to break up. If your students, you already have some that are able to decipher the lower level types of articles, then great, you can do this one. But again, it's the same strategy. You're going to walk them through how to actually divide this all up. So paragraph 4 says, Wilma Rudolph was the first American female runner to win 3 gold medals in the Olympic Games. Her performance was all the more remarkable in light of the fact that she had double pneumonia and scarlet fever as a young child and could not walk without braces until age 11. So if you go ahead and start analyzing this, you're walking your students through it. This is the first paragraph. What's important, if you're going to do the who, what, where, when, why, then it would be who, and you are looking at Wilma Rudolph. If you're going to do the 5 finger summary, then again, the somebody is going to be Wilma Rudolph. And then, what did she want if you're doing the 5 finger? She wanted to run or walk. And that is right here because you know that she could not as you read that paragraph. So what you're doing is walking your students slowly and carefully through all of it so that they are able to see how everything connects for a summary. Now you have the somebody was Wilma Rudolph. What did she want? She wanted to walk or run but couldn't. Now you have the but. She was sick. She had that scarlet fever as a child. So once again, there is the paragraph that we were looking at initially. Here's paragraph 2. Rudolph was born on June 23rd, 1940 in St. Bethlehem, Tennessee, the 17th of 19 children, and soon moved with her family to Clarksville. There is a lot of information there that is not necessary to the summary. At an early age, she survived polio and scarlet fever, only to be left with the use of one leg. Now that again speaks to, like paragraph 1, where she was ill. She had some issues. She could not walk. Then you have through daily leg massages administered in turn by different members of her family, she progressed to the point where she was able to walk only with the aid of a special shoe. 3 years later, however, she discarded the shoe and began joining her brother in the backyard basketball games. At Burt High School in Clarksville while a sophomore, Rudolph broke the state basketball record for girls. As a sprinter, she was undefeated in all of her high school track meets. So again, you have her being unable to walk from paragraph 1. Here, all of a sudden, because they did all this stuff with the massages and helping her out with a special shoe, she was able to learn how to run and be a sprinter, and she was undefeated. So she was really good. So what did they do from paragraph 1 here to help her? Well, her family massaged her legs and exercised her muscles. Now, if you look at the last paragraph, in 1957, Rudolph at Tennessee State University began setting her sights on the Olympic Games in Rome. In the interim, she gained national recognition in collegiate meets, setting the world record for 2,000 meters in July of 1960. In the Olympics, she earned the title of the world's fastest woman by winning gold medals for the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the Olympic record, and for anchoring the 400-meter relay world record. She was named by the Associated Press as the U.S. Female Athlete of the Year for 1960, and also won Press Athlete of the Year honors. So she started out with all those problems. Wilma Rudolph, what did she want? She wanted to walk and run, but she was sick. So her family came in, they started massaging her legs, exercising her muscles. And so what happened to her in the end? She was able to walk and run, and she did it so well that she won 3 medal Olympics at the 1960 Olympics. And if you look at this, this is a long passage. It's got a lot of sentences, a lot of words that they have to be focused on, your students have to be focused on. Usually, if I give them a short paragraph, I will, like the one that we did at the beginning from Harry Potter, I will have them count the sentences, because in their mind, that one only had 2 sentences, so they could go, oh, I can do 2 sentences. If I had them count these sentences, I've lost it, because already they're thinking, there is no way I'm going to be able to get through all of these words. And you don't want them, because then they'll be defeated and they will not be there to try to go through all the information. Now, with the 5-finger summary, who was the somebody? It was Wilma Rudolph. Well, again, what did she want? She wanted to walk and run. But there was a problem. That but is that powerful connecting word, that transition. She was sick with double pneumonia, scarlet fever, and she wore a leg brace. So, what happened? Her mother and her family massaged her legs daily, and she exercised her muscles every week. And then finally, what happened in the end? In the end, Wilma was able to walk and run so well that she won 3 medals at the 1960 Olympics. Broken down like this, where your text has been deconstructed to this point, now it's easy to see, and your students will be able to see, going from this to where you have it very simply put together, that they can create a summary. And the summary, again, would look something like this. Wilma Rudolph wanted to walk and run like a normal child, but she had double pneumonia and scarlet fever and had to wear a leg brace. So her mother and family had to massage her legs daily. Wilma also exercised. In the end, Wilma not only learned to walk and run without her brace, she became a 3-time Olympic medal winner. And all of that information to create that summary has come through deconstructing that original passage. It is walking your students very methodically through each of the paragraphs, breaking down each of the sentences to make sure that there is understanding. If you gave your students that first original passage about Wilma Rudolph, they would not even attempt it. They would be overwhelmed. And that is why I end up going very slowly, and I make sure that we start with simple text, non-threatening text, so that they can understand what you do as you deconstruct that simple text. Those patterns that you are able to pull out will help with, as you get into the more difficult passages, it will help you to deconstruct and write those summaries from those passages. And here it is again with the words that you had originally written on the hands. Another example. This is that same hand with your words, but then you've got the who, what, when, where, why, how. That comes from elementary school. So again, it's easy to use this to summarize narrative text, and it can be used for that page, chapter, entire book. So let's look at this one now. You're going to, again, deconstruct this text so that you are able to comprehend it. You are able to start seeing perhaps a pattern so that you can write that summary. If you'll look at that first sentence, first the plane's engine caught on fire and continued to burn. We don't have a somebody. All we have there, if you're going to do who, what, where, when, why, you have an airplane. Where are we? We're mentioned that we're on an airplane. There's the number first. And another thing that's important is fire. That's not a good thing. So that's the first sentence. You're focusing on the plane and fire. Second sentence, when Amelia Earhart flew to a higher altitude trying to put out the fire, ice began to build on the plane's wings. Now you have a person, Amelia Earhart, and you might have to go through explaining to your students who that is. They may or may not know her as that aviator. We had a problem in sentence 1. It was fire. Now you have another problem. Problem number 2, ice. Not good. Then you have a when from start to finish. Amelia Earhart mentioned from sentence 2. First solo transatlantic flight. That may be a problem for some of your students. You may have to go through and ask them, what does that mean? You may have to actually demonstrate using a globe or a map to show what that would mean. So there might be some problems in that sentence that are dealing with prior knowledge. So solo transatlantic flight was filled with near disasters. What disasters have we already learned about? Well, sentence 1 had fire. Sentence 2 had ice. Now in the next sentence says the weight of the ice on the plane's wing finally forced her to come down. You have ice again, and then you have that detail about wings have already been mentioned, or the airplane has already been mentioned. It's a problem. It's a disaster. Next sentence says, because the clouds were so low and thick during her descent, she's that pronoun. That's important. because she, again, refers to sentence 2, Amelia Earhart, sentence 3, Amelia Earhart. It's the same person. Nobody else has come into this passage. She almost crashed in the ocean. So we have fire, we have ice, and now we have clouds that are a problem, a disaster. By the time Amelia finally spotted the coast of Ireland, she was so far off course that her plane was nearly out of fuel. Once again, Amelia is mentioned. She's been mentioned again. Sentence 2, sentence 3, the she, that's her again, and then you've got Amelia again. So you've noticed we haven't switched to another person. And we've got a problem, another one, the fuel. So you have a number of disasters in this passage that Amelia Earhart has had to deal with: the fire, the ice, the clouds, and fuel. Putting those all together, and just do this mentally, what would you say would be an appropriate summary, a sentence? Summary is going to be a sentence, at least one, starting with a capital letter, ending with a period. What would be an appropriate summary for this particular passage? You've got to have Amelia Earhart in there. You've got to have those problems that she dealt with. And you have to know where she was when she had these problems. So as you put all this together, the focus is Amelia Earhart, correct? Because she's the one, the only person in that entire passage. Now, if she's the focus, Amelia Earhart, what about Amelia Earhart does your author want you to know? Your author wants you to know that she had problems with fire, ice, clouds, and fuel on her trip, her transatlantic trip. That's what your author wants you to know. So if you put that all together, if you did the 5-finger summary, your somebody would be Amelia Earhart. What did she want? She wanted to fly solo in her first transatlantic flight, but from start to finish, her flight was filled with disasters. So she almost crashed into the ocean. But what happened in the end? Amelia Earhart completed her first transatlantic flight. So using all that, if you use the 5-finger summary strategy, if you put it all together, it would look something like this. Now, if you use the old strategy from elementary school where you have the who, what, where, how, all that, then again, it still works. You arrive at the same point. Amelia Earhart's first solo transatlantic flight was filled with near disasters. And then if you did that who, where, what, when, why, you'll see how it all looks there. Very similar to the one with the 5-finger strategy. And that's how we analyzed it. We walked through sentence by sentence with the analysis piece, the deconstruction piece. So this is another, if you have the topic, your focus, which we talked about already, it's just another way to look at it. What about it? And your answer is, it's those disasters. So your summary would be Amelia Earhart's first solo transatlantic flight was filled with near disasters. That summary works for the entire passage. The disasters are covered. You don't have to mention them. You could, but there's no need to. And you've got the person involved and where she was, what she was doing. All of it's there as you have analyzed it and put it together. We are done. I also have for you, you are going to get a copy of this PowerPoint that you may use to help your students. These are where I get the passages. These are free. You can pull them up, make enough copies for your students, and then go ahead and work through deconstructing the passages as you need to. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. I hope that you have gotten something worthwhile that you can take back and use with your students. Just please keep in mind that it is not an easy fix. It takes a while. It takes repetition. Please start with something simple with the text so that your students will not feel threatened, and then work from there, build upon the skills that they're getting, whether you choose to go with the 5-finger strategy or you just want to use the old from the elementary who, what, where, when. Whatever it is that you choose to help them get through it. Remember, you do have to go sentence by sentence initially. You have to show them how everything connects. You have to guide them to figuring out the focus. You have to make sure you have them understand the pronouns and why they are important. And as you are doing all this and repeating them and helping them, it'll happen. They will start to have that understanding because they've got some tools to use. Once again, thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
While people are kind of thinking through that, we want to thank you all for joining the webinar, and I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone, if not today, Monday morning. So please look forward to that. We ask that you complete a quick survey for us. Upon completing the survey, you will get a certificate of completion, and I can send that through to everyone. And I will be also sending out the PowerPoint, Iris's PowerPoint, to everyone on Monday as well. Iris, it looks like we have a question here.
Okay.
How long should you model until you allow the students to practice on their own?
Oh, I wish I could tell you it's going to be 2 weeks. I can't. It depends on your makeup of your class. If you have more struggling readers than you do have that understand quickly or remember, perhaps they remember from other courses they took, other teachers they had, then it's going to take longer. But I would not worry about I'm taking too long, they're still not getting it. What you want to do is start really with that non-threatening material. Guilty, I used to do it. I would have and I did. I gave my students a passage and said, like Wilma Rudolph, that passage, and I said, go ahead and read through this, and then if you'll please do a summary. That's crazy. They have no idea where to start. So that's why I started going with non-threatening material like the little stories and the nursery rhymes. So it's up to you how fast you're going to be able to move them through it. Some are going to take a year because it's a lot. You're expecting them to do a lot. And you just can't give up on them. And if you start out with non-threatening materials, you're going to build that confidence. They'll be able to do it. And then I have mine share quite a bit. I pair them up with someone that seems to be understanding it better, and they work together. Because sometimes it's better to hear the same thing from somebody else. But I've had students tell me, you know, when I look at a passage, I hear your voice in my head. When they say that to me, I know that they're starting to use the strategies. And additionally, they ask me questions, and in the beginning, when they're very confused, they don't like to do this, it's hard. Their questions, I don't get it. That's basically what it is. I don't get it. But then when they start using these strategies and start figuring out how to deconstruct the text very slowly and methodically, they start asking me in a language that I'm familiar with. it's a reading language. They're using words, terms that I use as a reading instructor. And that's when I know they've got it. When they can pinpoint where they got lost to where they can actually ask me a question that I can help them get the answer, I know they've got it. I know that that bird is going to be flying soon. Any other?
Iris, we have another question here. You mentioned at the beginning that readers must have a purpose when reading comprehension.
Right.
How do you help students understand that the purpose other than a test situation?
And unfortunately, sometimes that's it. Your purpose is that you're going to have to read these passages and get the right answer. However, as you start out, when you start with like that very first one we did from the Harry Potter, the purpose is to deconstruct the text. That purpose really never changes. I don't care what passage you are given. Your purpose as that reader is to deconstruct that text. If you are a better reader and you read for pleasure, well, then your purpose is different because you choose books that you like to read. It could be a graphic novel. But when you are in the academic world, then your purpose is always going to be to deconstruct that text into something that is meaningful. So you have comprehension. And that's just the way it is when you are talking about academics. It's always going to be deconstructing the reading so that you have understanding. I hope that helps a little bit.
All right, and that was the last question, Iris.
Okay, again, thank you for being a wonderful audience. You have my email on the last slide. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email me and I will try to walk you through them. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Again, look forward to my email on Monday morning. And the PowerPoint presentation should be in your hands at that time too. Again, this webinar was made possible in part due to the Florida Department of Education, the Division of Career and Adult Education, and of course, Florida Literacy Coalition. You can check out our website for more resources at www.floridaliteracy.org. All right, thank you all again and have a wonderful weekend.